I wanted to. A lot of us have been looking at July. You guys have probably heard Ash talk about being interested to see what happens post July 4th, 2026, going back to Trump's inauguration. She's talking about that in the context of a change program, but just in the context of Trump talking about, we're going to have America's 250th. We're going to, everything's going to be going great. And we've been kind of a broken record on some of the shows, certainly, about how maybe 2025 and 26 have not gone the way a lot of us thought. And we can talk about that tonight. We've talked about that a lot this year, but I really wanted to kind of pivot the direction of how I talk about that, because I've been doing a lot of thinking over the last week or so, especially around GART travel. And I do think sometimes I get dragged down a little bit into being reactive, get drawn into the micro when I fancy myself more of a macro thinker. And despite things not going the way many of us have thought they would go, I'm actually pretty pumped about the way things are going. I've had a lot of fun on the geopolitical stage this year, looking at what I think Trump is doing with the Iran situation, the Iranian knot, as I've been calling it. I don't talk about the domestic scene quite as much, but I'm starting to shift my focus a little bit there. And I really do just I feel like there is an inflection point that has happened over the last few days. And I feel like Trump's celebration of this country and of what we're trying to do means more than just doing some rah-rah 4th of July stuff that he's been doing for the last decade, and that many of us have been doing for the last decade. Something feels different this time to me, and I want to see if my guest tonight can help me put that something into words. He is an OG. He is the OG of Badlands. He's also, I think, the most positive guy at Badlands. And I think you need positive thinkers in a new American golden age. I'm feeling positive, so I decided to start what feels like a new year at the Narrative with Zak Paine. How's it going, Zak?
It's going well, BB. It is a new year in a certain respect, because our 250th birthday has passed, and now we've moved into our 251st year. I mean, what was the length of time that the Roman Empire kept a successful run together?
I don't know, actually.
I think it was less than 250 yeyears. I think that they had, the Roman Empire itself might have, gone on in various forms.
Yeah.
But I mean, in terms of, a stable timeline where, things were good and they weren't trying to constantly backfill and overinflate the money and extend their army so that they could take in more lands, and then, losing people because they just couldn't hold it together. On top of a whole bunch of insane emperors that just got worse and worse and worse.
And women voting, women joining the Senate.
Women voting, that's right. Sleeping with kids, there's a whole bunch of things they did, which basically, portended disaster. And the United States of America may have had a series of, step backs and perhaps, step forwards. But I think overall we have endured in a fairly miraculous form in terms of governance and in terms of national unity. And that was truly the message that I heard from President Trump over the weekend. I mean, and I might catch heat for this, or I might not. People might be on board with me now. But, we've talked about, the fact that people thought things were going to be different.
Yeah.
Personally, I had hoped things might be a little bit different. I mean, everybody wants to see awesome shit, right? You want to see, the military swooping in and arresting all of these politicians, and Donald Trump coming on television and telling us that, guys, this is it. We're finally going for it. Balls to the wall, America.
The storm's here, man.
That's right. The storm is here. All of those things. How cool would that be?
Yeah.
Okay. But from my perspective, and I said this many years ago and people got upset with me, when I look at the moves that Donald Trump has made and the decisions that he makes, and sort of the meandering way that he might go about things, misdirecting and pushing hard, and then bringing it back to get something that might seem not as grandiose as what he asked for in the beginning. The entire operation that Donald Trump has been moving towards has been about the preservation of the United States of America. And, obviously there are things that need to be fixed. But for Donald Trump to step outside of the firmly defined powers of the office of the president, or to dramatically revamp the structure of the United States, in doing so in such a way that would just, make it not what we had before. And I know that a lot of people would love that. I think that would be totally outside of the boundaries of what he's been trying to do. I think that Donald Trump has been trying to recreate a time and a place when America was not only great, but stable and prosperous. And I think that is possible within the framework of what we were given by the founders. And to create something that is different, fundamentally, it would not be the United States of America any longer. It wouldn't be the Republic, because we have these separate but co-equal branches of government. For better or worse, it doesn't always work in the way that we want it to. But the every step that Donald Trump takes is about unraveling the negative that has been done while restoring the positive that once was. And so I'm not super surprised to see that things have progressed slowly, perhaps. But I agree with you. The direction that I see the United States going and the moves that I see Donald Trump making, I have so much hope for how this is going to be at the end, because we're not even 2 years into this term. All right. And I get it. We live in the TikTok generation. This is Instagram Reels and stuff. People want immediate gratification. They want, 7 to 15 seconds before they get to the end of the story. And that's just not how it should work in the real world.
Damn, you that's a great intro, and you basically you hit I've got like a page of notes here on the sidebar that I usually don't even use because I just know myself and I know how this show goes. But hey, that's why narrative people like it. But you hit like 5 of the key sort of things I want to revisit. So I'll try to get us into those in something approaching a structure.
Okay.
But yeah, I generally agree with that thesis. I was going to wait a little bit on our sponsor, but since you and I are just going to go, I'm going to do it right now from the start. I think you set us up well. We have a new sponsor tonight that I am drinking right now. Well, I'm drinking the product that the sponsor sent me. I did not kill the sponsor and reduce their essence into some sort of a cup to drink them directly. I'm drinking the thing that they sent me. And it's fantastic. So let me tell you a little bit about these guys at Earth Echo. And this episode's brought to you by Cacao Bliss from Earth Echo, a ceremonial grade cacao drink with 7 superfoods that lowers appetite, boosts focus, and calms anxiety. Raise your hand if you start every morning with coffee. Researchers at Johns Hopkins found that theobromine, the natural compound in cacao, gives you up to 6 times longer lasting energy than caffeine with no jitters or crash. Drinking cacao as a morning ritual is over 5,000 years old. Today's sponsor has brought that ancient habit into the modern world, and it tastes like hot chocolate. Most people have never heard of this. The Kuna people in Panama drink 5 cups of raw cacao every day. Harvard researchers discovered their rates of cardiovascular problems are 9 times lower than Americans. Cancer rates are 15 times lower. Energy, weight, and mental clarity stay remarkably strong into old age. The reason is flavonols, natural compounds in raw cacao that modern chocolate pressing almost completely destroys. Research shows high flavonol cacao can increase stem cell counts by 220% and improve blood cell function by up to 47%, but you need the real ceremonial grade form. Learn more and get your special discounts and free shipping today at trycacaobliss.com/badlands. That's trycacaobliss.com/badlands. CACCAO Bliss. So I just made this earlier. I didn't know what this was at first. I thought it was coffee. And also, I think that's a Badlands video that somebody made. Maybe it was Cheryl. And I love the the firm shaking into the camera of the bag just to make sure everybody the spastic shaking of the pouch. There's a lot of things I like about this. I am a coffee drinker. I slowly became a habitual coffee drinker, and I was not a coffee drinker when I was younger. I vividly remember starting to drink coffee in what I call the hell winter in New England 2015 when I was stuck at my parents' house for like a month, and the only thing that we had to do was drink coffee together every day, all day. So then I kind of became a coffee person. But I do shows late at night, and I do drink coffee at like 9, 10 p.m., and that is utterly devastating to do all the time. So I didn't even know that this cacao stuff, had some effects of caffeine. So I'm trying it out. Mine, I mixed just hot water, some milk, and a little bit of honey, which is what one of their recipes said to do. It's and I will also say, as somebody with undiagnosed autism, the mug that they gave me is extremely satisfying.
I've got a little bit of mug envy. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
here.
like it's smooth here, and then it's a little bit rougher here, and it's just a great shape. Very satisfying. If you're a cat or one of us, I feel like you would very much like this mug. So anyway, this stuff's great so far. Give it a try. It's supposed to be really healthy. It's not just cacao or cocoa. It's got all kinds of other stuff in it that's all natural stuff, including MCT. So I'm sure it will cure all of my ills and whatever cancers are floating around. So give them a try.
So yeah, Black Hat Destroyer had asked in the chat if cacao was real chocolate or if it was some like fake thing, and I answered, but I'm hip on this subject. I love this stuff because cacao is what they make cocoa and what they make chocolate out of. And the Aztec royalty were the first ones to cultivate the use of the cacao, and they made the drink that you are drinking right now. They called it chocolatl, but it had like an X at the front. So they might have pronounced it differently, but I don't know that anybody's actually heard Aztec spoken out loud except for in, what was that Mel Gibson movie? Apocalypto. And I don't even know if they were speaking Aztec or what they were speaking. They were speaking some dead language. He's a fan of that, and I thought it was an awesome movie. But yeah, this was basically like the drink of the gods, and theobromine is a great substance to put into your body. I am waiting on my package to show up. So yeah, definitely jealous on that mug tip there.
Yeah.
And the entire package they send you is beautiful.
It's good stuff. If I can have like a sugary or a drink that tricks me into thinking it's sugary because there's no sugar in it, and not load myself up with caffeine to the point where I'm bouncing off the walls and running through walls after my shows at 2 a.m, that's good. So I feel good, and it tastes fantastic. It really does taste like you're drinking like a connoisseur's hot chocolate or something. Hot chocolate that's not as sugary. So anyway, give it a try, guys. I'm curious to see. They had all kinds of recipes and stuff, so I'm curious to see how other people use it. Besides me, I just did like a traditional hot chocolate. Anyway, though.
Hold on. EC
go ahead.
always got to outbrain me. You're absolutely correct. The Aztecs did not have a written language. It was a pictographic language. And yes, I am aware of the influence of Spanish in the modern spelling of it. But I'm assuming that somebody must have heard this word spoken out loud, and so that had something to do with the way that it is written with modern letters. So, yeah, I don't know. But you're absolutely correct. Pictographics.
I didn't want to embarrass you with that one. But yeah, Chris and I did Apocalypto. I don't know when we did it, maybe a year ago or something like that. That's one I don't think I had actually ever seen. There's these movies sometimes. There's movies you've never seen.
Yeah.
And then there's like movies I'm like, yeah, I'm sure I saw that. And then we'll watch it for story hour, and I'm like, I either didn't see this or I just had no recollection of seeing it. And that one was pretty wild. It's
intense, man.
It's a good movie, but it's very intense. And that one will make you think about, speaking of where we've come from in good ways on the 250th, but also in bad ways. What we're fighting against. It's interesting. People in the info war and people that have been going into I call it the darkest path, and I know you're familiar with that. About the crimes against children, all these kind of storylines and pathways that led to the awakening of many people in our audience.
I would just like to recommend this film to you guys
Sleepers?
for story hour. Sleepers, yes.
Never heard of that.
Well, it's a movie that you need to see, and it actually ties into what you were just bringing up. So I would imagine Chris has probably seen it. It's got Kevin Bacon, Dustin Hoffman, Jason Patric, Brad Pitt,
Nice.
Robert
Wow.
De Niro, which is, not as cool as it used to be back in the day. But it's a great movie. It is a true story, and it is it's harrowing. But yeah, it's a film I would recommend.
Nice. Yeah, but it's kind of funny when you look at a movie like Apocalypto when you're literally seeing like eclipses and ritualistic sacrifice on pyramids, and when you watch that with pre-awakening eyes, you're like, man, what a crazy time in history. Thank God stuff like that doesn't happen anymore. You're like,
Dun-dun-dun.
and it really just, obviously people have different views on how literal some of these things are, but then you can't get it out of your head after you kind of go through the awakening and see Planned Parenthood, accidentally modeling their building templates and architecture looks pretty damn identical to Aztec pyramids and, new age, same practice. So, and I don't want to get down in the darkness on this show, but I think it's interesting context because, and I think it also lends credence to what you're saying and how I introed of thinking, I haven't considered myself having been bitching about the pace of things. More when I'm talking about, I have a very, very positive mindset on where we're at. Full disclosure, where I'm coming from of my kind of self-reflection of the last couple of weeks, had some good conversations at GART, had a lot of good conversations with myself. It's rare these days that I'm just alone for a few days with my thoughts and, feeling like, okay, because post 2024 election, that was a big inflection point, obviously. Donald Trump gets reelected, and Badlands media and many of us talk about things that even in the so-called truth community can be controversial. It's funny, like some of us will be being positive about something that then people will attack us for being too positive about it because you're not taking the negative stuff seriously enough. Then sometimes an obvious example of this would be election fraud, and on DPH, we talk about election fraud a lot. We talk about how elections are fake a lot and all that kind of stuff. We get attacked for doing that by people who say you're not trusting the plan. And, I'm really trying to break myself out of reacting to that criticism because whether valid or not, that I'm being too positive sometimes or too negative, I want to refocus myself and I want to refocus this show and the stuff I do, the writing I do, on why people were following me in the first place, and I think why they were following each of us, maybe on the macro for similar reasons, but we each kind of do different things. We're each interested in different things. We've got these followings organically for whatever reason. People wanted to know how we were writing about things, what we were thinking about things, and I'm just trying to refocus on that and say, like, do I actually care about this specific narrative, or am I just reacting to people throwing it at me, or am I defending myself and defending my views too much and getting tense and getting agitated? And, I talked to some people who've been following me for quite a while and thought, getting a little reactive, getting a little bit like people are following the show because they want to hear you have interesting conversations with your friends about stuff you guys have been digging on rather than this thing going wrong in the truth community and these people being stupid and these people coming at me for this. That's a work in progress. That's just my personal mission statement. And I think the timing of it feels good because it feels to me like there's something like that going on the macro that I don't know that I can quite put into words. But that's why I always like framing things as actual and narrative. You sort of mentioned on the actual level, Donald Trump, if he is part of what this community thinks he is part of, which is some larger plan. It is not just a 4-year election, whether you're talking about the Q drops, devolution, military intelligence, Ghost in the Machine. We think he is part of something bigger, something that has been planned for a long time, something that maybe the full control framing in the drops is partly responsible for some people getting too literal about some of that. So on an actual level, it makes sense to me that this stuff would take a long time. If we're basically in the Trump decade. This has been a Trump era, essentially, especially if you include the Our Boy Blue years. So it makes sense these things take a long time. There's a lot to untangle. which we could get into. But I'm kind of interested right now in the narrative of how he has been managing. He's been forced to walk this tightrope, I think, between so many different audiences and expectations. He's got like traditional conservatives that got into the MAGA movement. He's got disillusioned independents and Democrats like myself who kind of got into the MAGA movement. Then he's got subsets of those that went down the Q drops rabbit holes and think he's part of something much bigger, like I said. There's the Badlands audience, which is a mix of all of the above. Mm-hmm. And then there's just kind of Normieville that he's trying to navigate besides the political establishment and the geopolitical establishment. And if he knew, I'm starting to just get the feeling, based on the signaling, based on what feels like a turn in the positive direction in branding from Trump around the 250th, that the Patriots behind him, it feels like they know things on an actual level are going to start catching up to their narratives, if that makes sense. They had to lay out these positive narratives years in advance, even before the first term. Mm-hmm. And it just feels to me like there's a bit of a turn happening right now where Trump, the only reason I used myself as an analog there is to say, I think Trump at times in 2025 was reactive, like was reacting to the media and was defending the agenda and all that kind of stuff. And lately he just feels really calm. He doesn't seem worried about anything. And even though on paper there's some things that are not going well, mm-hmm. energy prices, economic hardships, housing, whatever you want to say, geopolitics, he doesn't seem worried about it. And I don't think that's because he doesn't give a shit. I think that's because they know maybe this lag effect is about to hit a ramp coinciding with this, or just coincidentally on the back of the 250th.
I 100% agree with you, and I think that it ties directly into the mindset that you kind of opened this segment with. Let me just begin by saying what you are discussing, what you are experiencing, the need to stop reacting, that is the smartest and like most perfectly, beautifully centered act that you can take for yourself, your mental health, and your general outlook on life. I had this exact same conversation with myself many years ago, because when you first kind of find yourself in front of thousands of people that, nobody likes to have conflict, right? I mean, like, you don't set out to piss people off. You don't, want to offend people, but the truth of the matter is, like, it's inevitable. Like, you cannot make everyone happy 100% of the time. And I think that the trick to being able to navigate that stuff is, number one, to just be confident in who you are and what you believe. And even if you don't know something, then you draw conclusions based upon your life experience and your interpretation of everything that's happening around you. So just be true to yourself. You just be true to yourself and true to the audience. And there's no need to react to any one person. You're always going to have people who are like, you suck, you're a shill, you talk too much, you say too much, or I don't like your intro, whatever it might be. And there will be people who do that because, maybe they're paid to do it. There will be people who do that because their entire life is built around going into streams of people they don't like just to screw with them. Right. Believe me, there's a lot more out there than you might think. And then you're going to have people who are operatives. You're going to have people who are truly offended by something that you've said. But I think
it's hard to say. It's hard to know the difference between those two. That's what I've struggled with.
And this is why it is not necessary to interact or to address every single one of those things. Okay, because number one, it'll make you crazy if you feel like you need to, bridge a gap or have a discussion about something, or if you know that you're going to react emotionally. The emotional reaction without the logical processing is something that it's a tool, I believe, that is used against us, not just in this space right here, but out in the world in terms of everything that's going on right now. I think that these battling factions that we have, they are counting on the fact that humans are emotional beings, okay? And we are kind of, especially online, rewarded with those immediate emotional reactions without taking the time to sort of put your thoughts together or to really ruminate on what it is that's happening and maybe why you're experiencing what you are. And so, you'll get points or you'll get demerits online based upon how you react to those things.
Right.
And so, I just decided a long time ago, it's going to be very rare that I, even care about those things. First of all, I don't know who those people are. I don't know what their frame of reference is. I don't know if they're doing it because they don't like me or because they are an operative and they're trying to derail me. Most of all, I just know, who I am, how I feel, what I think, and, why it is that I have this sort of outlook on the world. And so that's what I focus on. The show is my focus. And so that's what I bring. And that's why I keep coming back. And the real people in the audience, like the people who really appreciate what you're doing or who resonate with you or who have good ideas that they can bounce off of you or maybe give you facts and things to help you formulate a more cohesive framework of what is happening in the world, those people will come naturally. And there are thousands of them. Just among the Badlands audience and among my audience. And you come to know those people. And if you say something that, somebody who's been around for a long time, if they get offended and, they send you an email, then you'd be like, okay, well, real quick, you've taken this the wrong way. This is what's actually going on. And, you might feel the need to go ahead and respond to that person. But a lot of the time, BB, people want you to respond while you're live so that they can clip it. They can screen grab it. They can be like, look at what a prick he is. I can't believe anybody ever followed him. And that's an op. It's all an op.
Yeah.
So just for your own well-being, don't go there. Now, I know I can feel you want to say something, so let me just tie this into Trump, okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I've been saying this since President Trump came back, but he doesn't need to convince any of America, any one voting bloc, any normies, evangelicals, Jews, Muslims, it doesn't matter who they are. He doesn't need to convince them of anything because he's already got the mandate, okay? He was already reelected. He was elected for the third term, okay? So when he was outside of the Oval Office, when he was down at the Winter White House, he had a different framework that he was operating in. It was, going back out there, doing a lot of rallies. He's in campaign mode. When he comes back in, it's all business. And I think that every single time we saw him reacting emotionally to the press or to politicians and stuff, I think that is all part of Trump's op to derail and to sort of discombobulate the people that he's trying to overcome. Because truly, at the end of the day, I feel like when he started, he was zen and he knew exactly what he was doing. And then all of a sudden, like when Pam Bondi was there, I said this over the weekend, Pam Bondi, I think she was an op, like not in a bad way, but I think that, her public facing sentiment for America was that, oh, I'm Florida DOJ Barbie and I don't really know what I'm doing. And so therefore, all of the deep staters can feel safe because I'm not really going to come after anybody. I'm already owned by these special interests. But then Pam Bondi's time at the DOJ led to Todd Blanche becoming the acting attorney general. And now all of these things that undoubtedly were being honed and sharpened and, like Damascus steel being pounded throughout her entire time is now finally being thrust into the flame. And pretty soon it's going to be thrust through the heart of some of those enemies. All right. And that's Todd Blanche. He picked up the iron. Boom, boom, boom. OK, so Donald Trump, I think, was doing the same thing during that time, making these people that we're fighting against feel as if they've got the upper hand, but they never had the upper hand. OK, he's always been in control. And there were always things happening in the background that, like, we couldn't see, we couldn't know about. And only later would we finally have the context to see actually taking place. And so now, once again, America 250, he is totally zen. He knows exactly where we're going. He knows exactly what moves are being made. He knows exactly which people are going to get taken down next. I think we've entered a new phase of the operation. And when it all comes down to it, because he is the president, he doesn't need to convince anybody else that what he's doing is justified, because there's a reason he was elected. He knows exactly what he has to do. He knows exactly what needs to happen. He knows exactly what's at stake. And so Donald Trump is basically, king of the hill, and he knows it.
I totally agree, man. And one of the terms that I was using at the start of the year, although it's evolved a little bit in how I think about it. Speaking of what you pointed out about reacting, is I'd use the term info war posture. And I was using that mostly with Donald Trump, but also kind of with myself, of saying this is how I want to go into the year, sort of shelling up a little bit. But with Trump, I think you're definitely onto something with the let's assume we don't get the 3-scoop president, even though everybody here would absolutely love it, including myself. I'm all in if we get the 3 scoops, 3 public scoops. I think we already had. Our boy Blue was a second scoop. Yeah. But Trump has told us that himself how many times. It's pretty.
He just
silly
dropped a third term statement again over the weekend.
Did he?
Yeah,
I love that shit. By the way, thank you, Boom Diggity. I usually do rants at the end. Obviously, if you guys send in rants, get to those at the end. $100. Happy 250th America, and today is the 10-year anniversary of Jim Comey's press conference on Hillary.
Ooh,
interesting.
I just played "What Difference Does It Make" on Friday when I ended the show.
Wow.
Do you know the song?
What difference does it make?
Yeah, by Socialist Mob.
I'm not sure.
Jim Comey's press conference, and he's like, he's laying out what Hillary Clinton did. He was like, and Hillary Clinton comes in at what difference at this point does it make? And he's like, 52 email chains and blah blah. He's just going through everything. It's a great song.
All of that's related. I mean, it's kind of funny because one of the things you just said there, I'm going to bounce toward the end of what I was going to talk about, but it's more relevant right now. One of the things that I think has presented a challenge narratively is exactly what you're hitting on with Pam Bondi, with the Justice Campaign, right? Like what activated, I think, a lot of this base. Maybe not Trump's normie MAGA base, but certainly the InfoWar base is justice, is the campaign for justice, the search for justice, the hunt for justice. I don't think that's as normie a viewpoint among Republicans and among Trump supporters as maybe I used to think. I used to think a lot of people who support Trump, they want justice. They want us to roll up the deep state, but they don't use that kind of terminology. They've heard Trump talk about the deep state. They've heard him talk about the corrupt Democrats and the Russia collusion hoax and stuff like that. But I think Trump is so mimetic and everything, and he does embellish things, back and forth, that a lot of Normieville, including people who support him, really have not been locked in like this subset of his base in our audience has been, and in your audience for years, are like, we know who the bad guys are, or we think we know who the bad guys are. We think we broadly know what they've done, and we seem to see them walking free. In the same sort of attitude, I think, of a lot of people who followed the drops and followed the Trump as a military intelligence operation. People who kind of, or maybe the best word would be counterinsurgency. Yeah. As General Flynn used to talk about, as the Q drops mention, that sort of framing. I mean, if there was a devolution operation, which I think is difficult to argue against, that is basically by definition a counterinsurgency operation. So if you're walking around in, Main Street America in the political zeitgeist over the last decade, you might be a hardcore Trump maximalist. You might be a MAGA maximalist. And, this audience shares all the moral and logical principles with you as a normie. And yet, we've sort of been walking in parallel realities, even within the MAGA side of the equation. Because even though that normie MAGA and Trump supporter wants America to get better, they want to, they want strong borders, they want a stronger economy, they want opportunity for their kids, they don't want to be involved in forever wars, all these kinds of things. they don't think about this justice campaign. They don't think about the deep state in a very literal manner like this audience does. And I think that's what contributes to this feeling of, man, nothing has happened, or not enough has happened, or things haven't happened the way I thought. So all of that makes sense. But weirdly, I don't even feel, I think that stuff is coming, but I think I've noticed a shift in my own mindset. It's not that I've given up on any kind of consummation of a justice phase. I certainly now have let go of a lot of expectations of what that's going to look like compared to what I thought reading the Q drops in 2017. You know, I had certain images, like many of us did, of what does the justice phase look like? Maybe it looks like what we thought it did 10 years ago. Maybe it looks completely different. Maybe it's going to be translated in a completely different way, much less dramatic, much more procedural and by the book and political, which is fine. Whatever way it goes, I think is the way it needs to go. But the reason I feel so positive is not because I think the justice campaign is coming. It's more that I think the brightest signal of Trump's communications, especially in 2026, is ironically all the stuff he's focusing on with like the beautification of America. Just it's hitting me on a level I never expected it to. And maybe part of that is because in 2024 I started diverging my writing a little bit and writing about this idea I had of a nuclear renaissance and a futurism, like retrofuturism coming back, and just spurred out on the convergence of Donald Trump and Elon Musk in the central narrative, which just really got me very interested in 2024 and thinking, man, if Elon's not a bad guy, if this is part of some bigger plan, what kind of future are we actually looking at? And have Americans, have InfoWar people even thought about it? Like, we talk about Golden Age all the time, but I really am beginning to think that people have not thought big enough with what the Golden Age could be and how fast it could get here. And I guess, you know, to pass it to you, I think Trump is dropping these signals of that with something as simple as, we're making Washington, D.C. beautiful again. We're starting here. We're doing it way faster than anybody thought. And it's creating this national dialectic where it reminds me of holding up a cross or holy water to a bunch of vampires. It's like, just by making shit look great and beautiful and referencing God on monuments and things like that, the enemy is almost helping to accelerate and define the need to do that kind of thing, which maybe is because it appeals to my baseline former liberal sensibilities of being an artist and being a writer and being, you know, a creative minded person. When I see him like revering and really putting effort into signaling in between negotiations with the Iranian regime, Trump is like, we are making a triumphal arch. We are making a reflecting pool beautiful. We are remembering the founding fathers. You know, I don't think that's just about the 250th. I think that is him really sending a bigger signal as to the future, and even almost a spiritual signal of what we actually need to be focusing on as a people going forward.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point. And I mean, think about it like this. All of the monuments and the sculptures, yeah, I mean, they were symbols of legacy moments from American history, you know, just like the beauty of what we were able to accomplish as a nation and the men that were successful in bringing these things. A beautiful nation is a nation that you can believe in. Nobody is going to believe in a golden age or even strive for a golden age in a shithole country. Okay, I mean, you look at, you know, I think a lot of people also did not know just how bad it had gotten at some of these sacred sites.
Because it's kind of gradual.
Exactly. And it's, you know, it's the same way that everything has sort of fallen apart here in the United States. You know, if all of these things had happened overnight, I think the reaction to them would have been far different. Society never would have allowed it. People would have, you know, stood up and they would have tried to, you know, move it back and move the needle back, you know, stop the destruction of this country. But as you gradually destroy the country, the proverbial frog in the pot of not yet boiling water, people sort of just get used to it. You get used to looking at the ugliness of the world. All of a sudden, somebody throws a bottle on the ground, and then gradually it ends up being piles of trash littering the streets. Somebody sprays graffiti on a monument, and then gradually other people come in and do it. And it happens sort of slowly, and you don't recognize it until all of a sudden you turn around and everything that used to be beautiful is made of shit now. And you think about it, and we don't really make beautiful things anymore.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like the pinnacle of modern architecture is just like disgusting brutalism, right? I mean, it's just like boxes and stucco and things made out of plastic, and that's just that is not beauty. That is not enduring. That is not what the legacy of America was about. But if you make a nation that is beautiful on the outside, then it helps the people of that nation internalize that same beauty and structure on the inside, and it gives them something to strive for. Like, my God, America was actually great at one time. It became a shithole country over all these years because it just happened so slowly, people barely recognized. You know, one day you've got, a turkey or a chicken in every pot and 2 cars in every garage, and every family has 2.5 children, and people are married and successful, and they believe in God, and they wouldn't hurt a fly, and they're certainly not walking onto trains thinking that they're going to have to protect themselves or their children from being raped by an illegal alien. And then the next thing you know, all of those things are happening on a daily basis. And, you know, teachers are having inappropriate sexual relations with kids. People are showing up at malls and just opening fire. CEOs are stealing from pension funds, and you know, nobody got in trouble for any of that stuff for the longest time. It was just every now and then we had like 1 or 2 prosecutions. You know, I mean, how long have they tolerated dozens and dozens of blacks getting murdered in Chicago every single weekend? Like, how many years has that been going on? How many people are dead that should probably be alive walking around right now? Making society better. You know, all of these things happened in this span of time that was so slow, it allowed people to just accept them. And now Donald Trump has ripped all of the grime off. And he's saying, you know, here, this is what I'm talking about. You know, we can have this everywhere. All of you can have this. And we need to protect this. We need to make sure that this is the America that we give to our children and the future generations. You know, look at all of the nations that people are running from, trying to come to the United States, ironically, so they can shit in the street and throw trash on the ground. You know, India is dirty. It's disgusting. I mean, like, people litter everywhere. People defecate in the streets. Right now, we've got a huge population of Indian people living in Texas. And I just saw a picture over the weekend. This guy dropping trow on a public street and just like pooping in a median. Okay, just, you know, hey, no big deal. Okay, you know what? You know, that may be something that you do in your country, but not here. All right. I don't know if anybody confronted him, but like, I would have punched him. You know, I mean, like, that's not okay. You can't be doing that. I mean, not only are you pooping in public, but there are children that you're exposing your genitals to. There's all kinds of illegal things happening here because you're naked in the street, dropping poop everywhere. It's disgusting. You know, I mean, it's like,
clip that out and put it out of context. The opportunity is just,
you know, it's like it's like San Francisco. Like, think about the opening for Full House. All right, San Francisco was beautiful in the opening for Full House. You know, whatever happened to predictability?
You can't be pooping in the streets, guys.
No, but now we have a world where there's a poop map app.
Yep.
So you can make sure that you avoid the poop from the homeless
the free
people.
market, Zach.
Oh, God. You know, I mean, like I'll tell you what, though, the free drugs and the free needles and the free crack pipes, there's nothing free market about that. I mean, like, that's like socialism right there. You know, I mean, like, give people all the bread and circus that they can possibly consume, and either they'll be too stoned or too stupid or too asleep to do anything about the rest of the destruction of society that we're engaging in. You know, I mean, look at South Africa. Look at what's happened in South Africa since apartheid ended. Okay, I mean, like, that country is a war zone. They have rolling blackouts because you have crackheads who are literally stealing the power lines out of the ground. They're digging up the copper and they're cutting the lines and then they're selling it for drugs. And then, of course, there's trash and poop and graffiti everywhere. I mean, that's what people are running from. They wanted to come to the United States because it wasn't like that here. Well, we let too many of them in and nobody said anything, and now It's exactly the same in all of our big cities as it is in the places that they're running from. So I think that Donald Trump changing that is showing people that we don't have to live this way.
All well said. I mean, I know it's you almost have to make a joke out of it, but it's not a joke though. And it reminds me, I like arguing with my Canadian laws. And one argument that has been kind of stumping them lately, because they're never Trump or CNN maximalists, but one of the arguments that they're a little stumped by is the immigration side of things, because I've known my wife for 14 years now. We met in 2012. 2013, I lived up in Canada for 6 months when we were dating. 2015, I was up there for another 6 months when we were dating. And then, of course, over the years, I've spent a lot of time up there with family, when we were doing long distance, all that kind of stuff. I've spent more time than any American should in Canada. But even in that somewhat short span of time, 14 years, if we don't go up, there was an inflection point over the last couple of years. And my wife has now lived here in the U.S. for 8 years. 2018, she came down, and now she's a citizen. But when we go back up there, up into the Toronto area, we were playing on the highway. We started playing, I said, let's play Spot the Canadian in the car. Just like, and by Canadian, I mean an actual Canadian, a white person. And I don't know, it took us like 8, 9, 10 cars on the highway before we saw somebody who wasn't Indian. It's mostly Indian, Pakistani, all the kind of people that Trudeau was letting in, and that I don't think the central bank boy is Carney is putting a stop to, the king of the central banks. But with the in-laws up there, it's also generational. I'm noticing that millennials up in Canada, like my brother-in-law up there, I wouldn't necessarily describe him as liberal, but kind of a never Trump guy. He's an accountant, like he's making good money and everything, but he just had a kid a year before I did. And his views are a-changing.
They always do.
He's not coming out and saying go MAGA, but we're in a little family group, Canadian family group text, and I'm like, man, little bro's memes are getting a little spicy in a text chat that his parents are in, because I'm like, I'm the ne'er-do-well, and they're just like, well, that's what he does, and we love him, and it is what it is. Our daughter chose it, so he's brainwashed. But there is a generational divide there, where my in-laws moved up. They sold their $250,000 house that they bought, brand new build, $250,000. They sold it for about $1 million a few years ago. And who'd they sell it to? Some millennial or some Pajit doctor. Yeah. And they moved up about 2 hours north of the city. They live near Georgian Bay, nice area on the lake, retirement area. But even up there's a place called Blue Mountain, which is like a ski resort. And, you'd think Blue Mountain, Canada, hours away from the nearest metro, probably a lot of white people in a place like that, right? Like right on the lake. We go up there precious. For lunch last time I was up there. And, because it's like a summer place too. But in the winter, it's a ski place. And we're walking around there, and I'm just going, I would never allow my daughter to walk around this place in broad daylight, like a tourist attraction where it must have taken 10 minutes to hunt around and find another white Canadian family. And, people can say whatever they want. Obviously, I joke about being racist and everything. I do have black friends. Like, we're going to, play those cards. But I think I said the term info war posture a little bit ago. And what you're describing, another thing they described up there is on the beaches up on whatever that is. I think it's Lake Ontario. No, Lake Ontario is south. Whatever lake is up north on the north side.
Superior?
Maybe it's Lake Superior.
Yeah, that's the northernmost Great Lake.
I can look it up.
I would imagine Canada's got a bunch more lakes besides the ones that border Michigan.
It's a great lake. It's one of the, where is it? Lake Huron.
Lake Huron, okay.
Lake Huron. Georgian Bay. So right up in that area, I was thinking Georgian Bay, but it's part of Lake Huron. So on the beaches there, they had to pass ordinances in Collingwood and the surrounding towns up there. Really nice, beautiful towns, like old railroad towns that have been revitalized. They had to pass ordinances because all the fucking... I'm trying not to swear as much. Oh, my God. Work in progress, people. All the Pajeets, all the darn Pajeets were digging holes to poop in
Yep.
on the beaches.
Well, at least they had the decency to dig the hole.
Yeah. And then when they got in trouble, they started putting tents up to dig holes to poop in the tent.
Oh, my God.
Because they thought, oh, well, the white people are upset watching us poop in front of their kids. And these are the reason I bring that up is these are not the ones you're even talking about. You're talking about what CNN strawmans as the daywalker zombies.
Well, I am
strolling
talking
around.
about them, but I am also talking
No,
about
I know.
the professionals. The guy down in Texas that I mentioned, he looked like an H-1B visa holder that was working at an engineering job.
Yeah, so, and that's what I think they strawman us with the former. They strawman us by being like, you're talking about daywalker, heroin addicts, or whatever. Well, okay, well, I want to round them up too.
Yeah.
But no, we're talking about the people going to a family beach and pooping, digging a hole and crapping. And, this is all related because Trump... Anyway, my point about the in-laws, to bring it back to Trump, is that we got home from that area we were walking around, Blue Mountain, and I said to them, in an argument, of course, about immigration, I said, "Do you feel good? Can you cut the shit? Can we cut the shit a little bit and not do the Trump bad orange man thing for a 10-minute conversation? When you guys who grew up here and raised your children in Ontario walk around Blue Mountain, do you feel good? Do you feel good about where things are at? Do you feel like those people want anything to do with you? Do you feel like those people have the same culture as you? Do you feel like those people are dangerous to your kids? Do you trust them? Are things going in the right direction?" And of course the answer is no. Yeah. We feel horrible about it while we're living in our white retirement community with average value of homes in the 7-figure range because we retired and offloaded all of our debt to our kids, which our audience got mad at me for saying on the Blitz this weekend. But that's what's going on. And the kids are dealing with the Pajeets. My brother-in-law, the reason he's becoming a closeted MAGA guy, I would guess, is because he's paying a 7-figure mortgage for a fixer-upper on the edges of Toronto that's 1,300 square feet, trying to raise a family. That kid has to make like over 200,000 US dollars, and he feels like he's struggling. And he should be rich. He should be wealthy.
Don't they pay
he should have 3
40%?
properties.
Don't they have 40% taxes or something
yeah.
there in Canada? Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. Well, they got all that free healthcare, right? But all of them buy private healthcare in addition to the free healthcare because they know the free healthcare is bad. But all of which is just to say that posture I was referencing with Trump, that I'm seeing inroads with people, and I think that there's something to take out of that as we're hitting this inflection point, I think, where more and more people are just starting to adopt that posture, which I think is positive, of just saying, no, I don't care if you call me racist. If that makes me racist, I'm racist. Like, I'm not okay with that. And we're gonna do something about it. And I think it's emboldening people, and all it's taken is Trump. He does, to your point about not trying to seek re-election or play political games. He just comes out now. He was doing this 10 years ago, but now he truly doesn't seem to be trying to play any games. Yeah. He's just coming out and saying, this is what we're going to do. And, I've been using this refrain, kind of going back to what I said about the beautification of America. The beautification of America is happening concurrently with the rapid decline of the rest of the West.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say it's kind of rapid. They've almost hit a tipping point in the other direction, whether you're talking about Belfast or England or France. France, they're having riots over air conditioners right now. Yeah. Beating up old French ladies for air conditioners. And, anyway, the World Cup has even amplified a lot of this. And 100%. I think it's all by design. I think there's a beautiful dialectic going on right now where foreigners in the West are seeing, despite what the media says, Americans seem to be pretty happy about where things are going for them. And that does not seem to be going that way up here. And I think that bifurcation is only going to accelerate.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, especially surrounding the World Cup, because remember, the World Cup is being held not only in the United States, but also in Canada and also in Mexico. Imagine the stark contrast that these Europeans are going to have when they go to the games in Mexico, when they go to the games in Canada. You know, and here's the thing. It's not racist to say that you don't want foreigners pooping in a public area. It's not racist to say that you want your beaches to remain beautiful, that you don't want anybody littering and you don't want anybody digging holes and pooping. It's not racist to say that you want to have the ability to pass on wealth to your children or to make a life where they themselves can build wealth. And simultaneously, all of that was promised to them is being given away to people who were not born here. None of those things are racist, okay? But they were sold the lie here in Canada and in Europe that bringing these people in would be culturally enriching. None of that stuff is culturally enriching. You know, we've got YouTube and Google if we want to learn how to make shawarma or, whatever some, dish might be from another country, okay? You don't need somebody coming here from another country and making those things for you. And there's a big reason why it's been so much worse in these recent years is because there are simply certain cultures who have these things about them. And we didn't do anything to assimilate them. We didn't even make the pretense that they needed to assimilate in the same way that previous groups of immigrants coming from a variety of different countries did. And they were allowed to just go ahead and do whatever the heck they wanted. And they were given priority status over people that were born here and even over immigrants that were trying to come here legally. You know, yeah. I've never met an immigrant who came here legally through the process of paying for all of their visas and their paperwork and, taking the oath and, doing it to come to America to become an American. Never met one of those people that was taking a dump on a beach or that was even littering on the streets. And if you don't mind, BB, I've got actually a 1-minute video of Premier Doug Ford telling people not to poop on the beaches.
Never thought we'd see the day.
No, me either. And, I also want to mention Doug Ford's brother was an unrepentant crack addict. Okay. The man died of a heart attack. All right. So nobody's perfect. All right. But Doug Ford's brother was never pooping on a beach. Okay. And he may have had his issues, but here we are.
Yeah, they don't have 100% proof, but we've given Wasaga Beach $1 million to build bathrooms and build, and hire more people. But I'd be more than happy to talk to the mayor. It's a very popular beach. And again, they have no proof that people are pooping in the park per se. So
just a follow-up.
It's pretty bad if they are.
In particular, Wasaga is asking for the province to ban tents in the parks, mirroring its bylaw on town-owned waterfront lands. What steps are you prepared to take to help the town improve its image? As Wasaga says, it's been gravely harmed by this misinformation.
See, the problem with that, if we ban tents in provincial parks, that's just not going to cut it across the board, right? You can't pick and choose. I think people are respectful enough that, folks, don't be pooping on the beach. Simple as that. We have no proof of it either. And this social media, they get rolling on the social media. So, I just, they have to.
So, even in the face of, stepping out and doing a press conference about not pooping on the beach, still pushing the disinformation, okay? Yeah. That the last question from a reporter was do you have any direct proof that immigrants are pooping on the beach? Oh, you mean, do I have a video?
Yeah, smell my finger, bitch.
Yeah, do I have a picture of the turd coming out of their butthole? Maybe not, all right? But, I bet you the beach was full of Canadians, and I bet you that they saw who did it. All right, it's you're in a banquet hall and you hear a fart. Everybody looks in the same direction for the same reason, right?
Some Indians start putting up a tent on the beach, and we know what's going on in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing good. And yeah, I mean, it's It's absolutely wild. And, that's a microcosm. It's kind of funny. I actually, today, well, for tomorrow's Badlands Brief, Ash, Ghost, and I kind of alternate writing takes for different news items that we don't necessarily cover on the shows. One of them I mentioned a little bit ago was these air conditioner riots in France. Now, it's being framed a little bit as, okay, it's really hot in France. They've got a heat wave. So immigrants are, bowling over old ladies in the south of France and trying to get air conditioners from them. But this is all in the context. This is all taken against the context of the World Cup. And, there's been so many of these. When I think Ghost in the Machine, when I think Patriot Ghost in the Machine, sure, sometimes I think it's like a code or a wink or a nod. And, maybe that era is largely behind us in terms of when we were doing, when I think they were giving us a lot of winks and everything to keep us going with the Q drops and all that. Now, when I think of Ghost in the Machine, I think about algorithmic boosting for us. Is it purely organic that all these videos of Europeans just raving about the United States that are here from the World Cup are going viral right now? It's so good for Trump's agenda. It is so good for our agenda.
Yeah.
It's so good for our country. And it's so good for the West to be subjected to this dialectic that I feel like we're getting an algorithmic helping hand with that kind of stuff, with these Europeans, just walking around the Boston area, walking around wherever they are, even California, even though it's got all its problems, and saying, yeah, in comparison. But one of the things that's kind of taken a lot of us aback, I think, that they're raving about is just how comfortable it is in the US. That any building you walk in, any residential building, any commercial building, many public spaces, in between spaces, there's a lot of space and it's cool. It's comfortable. And we're like, aren't you guys from modern nation? Like, aren't you from Paris? Aren't you from England? Aren't you from Dublin? What are you talking about? Why are you freaking out about AC when it's hot out?
It doesn't exist. Like you would think at a very least. Okay, so they don't let AC in people's houses. That's crazy. But like, surely they have AC at restaurants. No. Surely they have AC at the grocery store. No. Surely they have AC at the doctor's office. No. Everywhere you go, it's got to be stifling, okay? Like you have, I didn't know this, but there is a tremendous number of people every single year who die in Europe from heat stroke because of this.
I guess there's
very
a record this year. That's why, I think that's why people are pissed off.
Yeah.
But one of the things I said about that, about the point we're making about the Indians pooping on the beaches, is I said years ago, for something to go truly mimetic, for something to go truly viral, I think it needs 3 components. I'm not sure if I made this up, but this is my framing of it. It needs to be funny. The story needs to be funny at a glance. It needs to be a little bit scary. And it needs to communicate an underlying truth, which is separate from whether or not the meme is true. And the pooping on the beaches thing is an example of this. And these AC riots in the south of France are an example of this. When you see headlines about a bunch of Pakistanis knocking down an old woman to steal the AC because they're all dying of heat stroke in France, it's a little funny because you're like, man, what's going on over there? You guys are silly. You're losing your shit. Then you think about it for another 10 seconds. You go, that's a little scary. You guys are fighting each other in lines waiting for a window AC unit. When I see window AC units driving around my town, I think, man, you guys don't have central air yet? And that's for a window AC unit for people that have AC.
Yeah.
So that's what you're buying at these stores. So that's a little scary. And then third, it communicates this core underlying truth that's buried like right below the surface of conscious regard. And I think that's what's happening right now, kind of writ large. Whereas the US, I think as Americans are adopting Trump's posture, more of them, and just saying like, we're going in that direction. This is the direction we're going in. Europeans are being dragged kicking and screaming into the opposite direction. You're going to take on more immigrants. You're going to get more diversity as our strength. You're going to get fewer rights. You're going to get less comfortable. You're going to have less money. You're going to own nothing and be happy. Like all that stuff is just being pumped into them while Trump is accelerating this humiliation ritual on their world leaders. I mean, we saw a lot of this during the Iran crisis that I've been, writing about for most of the year, where he is drawing this clear line of demarcation. I wrote about in 2022 in the Righteous Russia series, the power is power refrain. You and I talk about quite a bit in reference to Game of Thrones. But I think Trump has humiliated their leaders. He has told them, you have no economic power over us, no sway over us. You have no military sway over us. You have no right to be at the big kids table when it comes to world affairs. And now to cap off that humiliation ritual the Europeans have been going through for a couple of years now, accelerating, I think, in Trump's second term, again, in comparison to the US. Now I think finally their ire is actually being turned back in the direction of their own leaders.
Yes.
And ironically, it's because of these mimetic, strange, viral things like people pooping on beaches and people dying of heat stroke, while Americans in Alabama are, compared to them, living like kings. Even though we all think things could and should and will be a lot better than they are. I think that just shows you the accelerated pattern of decline in the rest of the West compared to us.
Absolutely. And, I also think it's pretty interesting that USMCA is now being disbanded during the midst of the World Cup. Okay, like that will be devastating. I don't know the effect that's going to have on Mexico. I would assume it's going to have, a pretty incredible deleterious effects on it. But in Canada specifically, I know there's like 2.5 million jobs that are directly as a result of USMCA. And so that goes away, and Canada is going to be thrust into even darker times. And yes, seeing America not only for what it is already, just the beauty, the land, just everything that we have here is so different compared to these other nations. But to see that is getting better and that strong leadership can bring about incredible change and, not change in a bad way, but change in a good way. I think that all of these people are going to end up going back to their home countries, and they're going to be just struck immediately by how bad it is. And if they haven't allowed themselves to admit it yet, then when they get back, it's only going to be worse, okay? Because, they're going to be walking back into a shitstorm. No more Buc-ee's, no more wide streets, no more not having to worry about getting raped or getting purse snatched by a gang of illegal immigrant street urchins. Things are really bad in Europe, and it's across the entire Western world. There is now this pushback. Remigration is a huge talking point. And many different European countries, in fact, the European Union itself has just agreed on a framework to start sending these people back. And that is going to be a major step forward in helping to sort of rebalance things. But they have a lot of work to do as well.
Yeah, damn straight.
They're going to need people to do that work.
Going back to the beautification, so the Trump Presidential Library is yet to be built. But I just thought this was such a great, side by side of that dialectic, that visual aesthetic dialectic that we're also talking about with the West. The rest of the West really is the global end state, the globalist end state, right? Or at least they're bringing it closer to that. One of the things I talk about with my wife all the time is the idea that it feels like Canada has been sort of the testing ground, the proving ground for a lot of these globalist sort of situations. Canadians love Barack Obama. I don't mean the based Canadians who are trying to separate in Alberta. I mean, your run-of-the-mill systemite Canadian. But this is for anybody who's not seen this, on the left here, you've got a rendering of the planned Trump Presidential Library for Miami. Now, it's not even necessarily my style, but I think what's cool about it is you've got this, it's clearly Art Deco sort of inspired. It's almost like a mix of a Miami Tower meets Art Deco. There's also, other images of what the ground floors will look like. There's a lot more to it than this. There'll be like green spaces and a golden arch and all kinds of stuff. But just on a surface level, you've got that. And then you contrast it with Barack Obama's design for his presidential library, which I believe just opened within the last couple of months. And you've got this monolithic, you used the word brutalist earlier, this brutalist sort of structure. And I really have come to believe that what we were sold, what we as humans were sold as utilitarian design of our modern cities, of our modern buildings, even of our houses in many cases. It's not just that they wanted to make this stuff cheaper and lower quality. I think it's a demoralization. You know, when you look at a city that looks beautiful, when you look at a building that looks beautiful, when you, as Trump has been sharing for weeks, when you're re-gilding statues in Washington with, 55 pounds of gold leaf, and, bringing back the fountains and all this kind of stuff people in DC are raving about. When you contrast that with this brutalist architecture, you can see in the comparison, there is no way somebody thought this brutalist utilitarian direction of architecture was better for the human spirit.
No.
They thought quite the opposite. And now maybe there are real architects and everybody who gets indoctrinated into that way of seeing the world, and then they repeat this kind of design language. But it feels to me like it's become pretty clear that this design language was sort of infiltrated into the West in order to act as basically a demoralization layer. Maybe so that children growing up in the new world just don't have any concept of what it used to look like or what it could look like.
Looking at that mock-up for the Trump library, I'm immediately it evokes a number of other beautiful structures around the world, like the Eiffel Tower or the the Empire State Building. And looking at those statues being re-gilded, it's like Trump is bringing back this like Tartarian aesthetic, this absolute beauty in architecture. It is totally something that we have lost as a society. You can have form and function. Obama's library, all it's missing is the Eye of Sauron on top. It looks like freaking Mordor, okay? It's just disgusting. You look at it, and it is something that you just inside, you have this feeling of like ick. And it's even worse when you understand that the Obama library was built essentially off the backs of black-owned businesses in Chicago for basically nothing. They essentially created a modern-day version of the slave trade because they convinced all of these businesses to come in and do this work on the promise that they were going to be paid on the back end, and then they just never paid the bills. They left these guys in the lurch, and you've got all of these black-owned businesses, contractors and construction companies that are now being forced to file bankruptcy because nobody has paid them. They just did it. Oh, it's Obama? He's good for it. Like, psych, guess not.
Yeah, and as I'm showing, just that these are like mock-up videos of the presidential library, it evokes... like you said, it evokes these other classic designs. I love that you threw Tartarian in there. That's like, I always say that's the rabbit hole I've dipped my toes into a few times. And the only reason I pull myself back is not because I don't think there's something there. It's because I do think there's something there, and I will become absolutely obsessed if I go too far down there. So I'm planning to do that. But I need to wait until I have like a clear mental schedule before I can be full Tartarian. But it evokes this. It evokes even the Art Deco design. Art Deco is all about looking up. I'm actually been working on this feature on my Substack that I haven't released yet. I've been working on it off and on. One of the convergences, one of the strange parallels that I've spurred out on, and probably only me that thinks there's anything to this, between Elon Musk and Donald Trump is actually in their visual design language. I really started to think about that, playing with the idea that we are looking at some sort of plan for the future, for the type of golden age future that a lot of us dream about. And I had this epiphany at one point of thinking, I know that Elon Musk's design language, his physical, or at least I forget the guy's name, Ars Leller, something like that, the key architect, the key design language guy of Tesla that Elon's been working with for, more than a decade, Hans something, somebody in chat might know. He was heavily inspired by Streamline Modern, that sort of the that sort of silver bullet type of retro future Jetsons kind of look. You know, toasters in the 50s were looking like this, where everything had this kind of
the lowest drag coefficient on everything that was ever built.
Right. So all, you know, old cars and everything. You had Chevrolets and all that, Chevelles. This streamlined modern architecture is what Elon is all about, and that's all about, you know, giving the impression of going fast, going forward, going into the future, going for speed, and you know, having these clean designs. And then the Trump architecture, Trump has a real design language that's kind of at the heart of what he's always done. And I would say it's comprised of two things. It's comprised of Art Deco, kind of inspired, almost Great Gatsby sort of thing. That the same golden design language that modern artists critique about Donald Trump as being gaudy in some way used to be very earnest. It used to be seen as the height of striving and of wealth and of art. You know, the Gilded Age, right?
Yep.
And I think that's what a lot of what Trump's design language evokes. And then you can see it in his plans for the presidential library. This is all about Art Deco, modern Art Deco, and it's vertical, right? Art Deco is very vertical. Yeah. And then you've got Elon Musk, who's the other futurist on the game board that may or may not be working with Trump. And he's all about going forward. And I think of the design language of Streamline Modern as very horizontal. Maybe I went way too autistic there, but I just think there's something to it. You know, there's something about the aesthetics that they're evoking. And it does feel like, with DC as kind of the testing ground, the physical environment of DC, there's the dialectic we've had going on with the reflecting pool, which I think is fantastic. And that Ghost in the Machine and Trump have been amplifying that whole narrative. I mean, it's the place where we're literally draining the swamp, right? And we've had this national mimetic argument playing out of this process of beautifying and then destroying and then beautifying the reflecting pool in DC. So it feels to me like Trump is using DC as this proof of concept to the American people, showing them, on the one hand, this is what the future can look like everywhere. And it can, to your point about Tartaria, it can look a hell of a lot like the past that maybe they stole from us. But also at the same time, it's drawing out the vampires, it's drawing out the swamp creatures. And they, ironically, are showing the American people, we don't just hate Donald Trump and hate you. We hate the idea of making things beautiful and making things better. Because, you know, on some level, they're admitting that by making things beautiful, clean, and hopeful, that nobody is going to want to adhere to their ideology, which is basically proof of concept in and of itself.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that there's no mistake. President Trump is talking about, bringing back the World's Fair. The World's Fair is where a lot of these, modern Tartarian theories have come from, because people have said, how could they build these beautiful buildings, in this short period of time, and then, they're suddenly gone. Well, I mean, I can tell you, when it comes to the World Fair, a lot of that stuff was fugazi.
Plaster,
I mean, it was
right?
Yeah, it was plaster and chicken wire and stuff. But I mean, it goes to show you that you can make beautiful things on a budget and bring it in very quickly. And I think that the sentiment of it is what Donald Trump is evoking here. We can have our cake and eat it too, and everything does not need to be a grift. I mean, you look at California, everything that Donald Trump calls out, it's like the failures of the modern political system, okay? You've got the $1 billion train to nowhere. You've got Obama's monstrosity there in Chicago. You've even the reflecting pool, okay? First of all, that thing never held water, okay? I mean, like, when they first built it years ago, that's reclaimed swampland, and it was just always sinking. And it's like I think it's like a foot lower today than where it was when they actually built it initially. And so they were just constantly pumping new water into it. And the more water that leaks, the more it wants to settle and it wants to continue going down. And under Obama, they spent a ton of money. They completely tore everything out. They drove like telephone poles all the way down into the bedrock, all along that entire thing. And then they laid modern concrete with rebar and everything. and they still screwed it up. They paid tens of millions of dollars to once again build it incorrectly to just leak 50,000 gallons of water a day. Okay. And so now President Trump comes in and he's like, hey, I can actually do this. I can fix it.
Yeah.
It's just like he's trying to fix everything else. And it didn't have to cost an arm and a leg.
And I think that, I mean, it recalls the, what's the name of the rink that he kind of, he made a big deal out of in the 80s, or was it the 90s? In what was it, Rockefeller Plaza? Is that what it is? Where Trump, Trump kind of, I'm using the word dialectic a lot tonight, but he forces these dialectics. He doesn't do these things behind closed doors. Of course, there's dealings on all of these things that we're never going to see. But he made the Rockefeller ice rink, he made that into a New York City argument. He made it into a big symbol of decay. That was what it was all about. He wasn't pointing out that the ice rink was in disrepair and, it was ugly, etc. He was pointing out, even at that time, this is a choice, to your point. This is chosen decline, and a little bit more, this is corruption. If you look back at a lot of his interviews, which I did last year when I was spurging out on Streamline Moderne and Art Deco and all that stuff, I was looking at the history of Trump's building projects and his engineering and everything. And, that the ice rink, the people in chat are saying the Woolman rink. For some reason, I was thinking, is it in Rockefeller Plaza or something? Either way, the Woolman rink.
It was like the Woolworths. Maybe it is Woolman. I don't know.
Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know. But people are saying that. Either way, whatever that famous ice rink is, Trump, obviously, I think most in MAGA who know the story think of it as, oh, Trump made this thing beautiful. He did it for cheap, etc., which is obviously true and obviously ingratiated him to many New Yorkers. But I think that in hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight of what we've seen that Trump is a part of today, and especially what this audience thinks he's a part of, there was more going on there at that time. He was pointing out, this is a choice of decline, and where's the money going? Where's all the money going, right? Yeah. And I'm from Boston, obviously, and we actually have, at least in the U.S., I believe the most notorious construction project in modern history was the Big Dig under Boston. And I can't tell you the numbers off the top of my head, but I know that it was such a botched job, both in terms of construction and, more importantly, money, that even the mainstream in real-time media was commenting on this as a national story for basically 10 years off and on about how much money was spent. And that was basically laundering through City Hall.
It was $14.6 billion to complete in 2007. However, it's not finished yet. And it fully, when it's ultimately paid off in 2038, it will have cost the city of Boston $24.3 billion.
For a tunnel.
Wow.
It's absurd. And things are better there than they were in terms of, when I was a kid, you had to take Starrow Drive all around the city and it was an absolute nightmare. So now there's tunnels. But obviously it was a laundering op.
Yeah.
And or sheer incompetence. It's either one. And Trump, I think, these days, ever since he's been in the political realm, he's been more comfortable saying something is laundering and something is abject corruption. I think back in this time where he was probably undercover in some level. I mean, I'm definitely one of those people who thinks that the Trump story goes back a hell of a long way. There's a reason he's posting pictures of himself from the military academy with increasing frequency. Tonight, he went on a little Truth Social blitz. Some people might think this stuff is just kind of cute nonsense, but not nonsense, but just sort of who knows if it means anything. But to me, there is something signal in Trump posting just pictures of his dad, pictures of his family. I'll show you right here tonight before the show. He posted my friend and mentor, Fred C. Trump. This was tonight. He also posted Trump family 1915. We got this guy here, John. And then we've got, is this the rink?
Yeah, it looks like it. Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. I didn't even see that earlier, but maybe I did subconsciously. So that's the rink. And then the best one, speaking of the future and the past,
Yes.
John Trump. What's he next to? Tesla coils there?
Yes. Yeah, that's what it looks like.
You've got Donald Trump posting Dr. John G. Trump of MIT. So I'm giving myself away of what I think the most positive thing is. I did want to hit another ad. Do you want to hang out a little bit more? Or are you
Sure.
gonna run?
Yeah. I can.
Okay.
I can stay
Let's
through
do
my
one
notes.
more little segment. I'm going to hit our other show sponsor. I think, if I can pull it up. So we are also... I never pull these up on time, actually, which is what ruins it. We are also brought to you by our friends at Rumble, specifically Rumble Wallet. We hear a lot about crypto, but here's the part most people miss. Crypto was created so you could actually own and control your money. After the 2008 financial crisis, Bitcoin was designed as an alternative to banks. So instead of a bank holding your money, delaying transfers, or limiting access, you're in control. And if you've ever had to wait for a transfer to clear, you've felt that problem. Now fast forward to today, and everyone's heard of crypto, but getting started still feels complicated. That's exactly why we use Rumble Wallet. Takes all that complexity and makes it simple. Choose what you want. Bitcoin, dollar-backed stablecoins, or even digital gold backed by real gold. No complicated setup. It connects with MoonPay so you can use your credit card, debit card, or bank and be up and running in minutes. Once you're set up, you can even support your favorite Rumble creators like us at Badlands directly. So do this now. Scan the QR code or click the link in the description and download the Rumble wallet. From there, you can set up your wallet, tap buy, and you're in the game. In just a few minutes, you can go from hearing about crypto to actually owning some. So thank you to Rumble Wallet for supporting the show, and Rumble, obviously. And the reason I actually thought of that ad as well was not just the timing. It was because my other Spur Gout that I've mentioned on some shows before, my favorite speech that Donald Trump has ever given besides the 2017 inauguration was his speech at the Bitcoin Nashville conference. And at Bitcoin Nashville in 2024, Donald Trump comes out on stage. He gives, 45-minute kind of rambling speech to the Bitcoin maximalist crowd. He tells them, you're pretty smart. You're not as smart as you think you are. And then he says, my family's actually pretty smart. I'm paraphrasing here. I am going to find the quotes maybe tonight or tomorrow. But he basically then says, my family is smarter than a lot of you think we are. And I took that as signal right there, because he's saying, like, you guys, I took it to mean you guys found the right answer or a right answer, but you don't quite know what it's an answer to. And you think I'm just the orange man who's pumping your bags, but actually I'm a lot smarter than you think I am. Right after he says, my family is smarter than you think, he brings up, did you ever hear about my Uncle John from MIT? So he brings this up at Bitcoin Nashville, right? Then he doesn't really go into any details. He just brings up Uncle John, MIT, my family's really smart, right? Right after Trump gets off the stage, who comes out next as a keynote speaker? Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy at the time, now Strategy. The two don't reference each other in their speeches. Michael Saylor gives a keynote speech, and what is the theme of Michael Saylor's keynote at Bitcoin Nashville? Nikola Tesla, energy, vibration, and frequency, and how Bitcoin is the perfect encapsulation of what Nikola Tesla was attempting to distill on a informational level. Michael Saylor is an MIT guy. So that's one of those like little hints that I look at sometimes and I go, you're going to tell me that Trump tells all the Bitcoin maxis they're really smart, but not as smart as they think they are, and that he's actually smarter than they think, and his Uncle John was an MIT guy, and then Michael Saylor, an MIT guy, comes out and talks about Nikola Tesla, which Donald Trump does not reference in his speech. And then he talks about frequency, vibration, and relates it to Bitcoin. It's like, it doesn't mean Bitcoin's everything, but it's just, I was going to ask you, in this transition that we're clearly in, and maybe this inflection point that we both seem to think is going on, that's one of the things that makes me the most hopeful about the future, is these little hints as to how big the game really is that we're playing about, futurism. But I wonder, what you think of that, and just what kind of gets you up in the morning besides Hunt for Justice and that sort of justice campaign on a more sort of hopeful future note, what are some of the things that you think have the most promise, or some of the things that you're most excited about, maybe that we don't talk about a whole lot?
Technology, certainly. And I think that Nikola Tesla is the key to all of that. I mean, we've talked on many occasions about sort of the slow to general public rollout of technology. I mean, the government and the private contractors that are developing technology based upon previously, unexplained concepts or upon inventions that were seized or held onto. I mean, that stuff all eventually rolls out. And I feel like we are right on the cusp of so many great things happening, specifically within that space. And Trump has frequently referenced his uncle, and I think that the smartest people in the world understand that the concepts that Nikola Tesla worked on are invaluable in terms of what the future of humanity looks like. And so, we have to have a way to roll those things out so that they're not saying like, okay, yeah, this is something that we've had for 30, right, 50, 70 years. Needs to make it appear as if like, my gosh, this is a new discovery and now we're bringing it to humanity. And so this is going to make your lives better in this way or in that way. And I think that perhaps two of the major pieces of that are two of the, public-facing technologies that President Trump has put a lot of emphasis on, which are artificial intelligence and quantum technologies. Most people don't really understand the idea of quantum, but I mean, like, we're talking about some very advanced concepts that have not exactly been presented to general public in a way that makes it something they can, really conceive as being part of their everyday life. But I think that those two things harnessed for the act of disclosure are probably going to be very, very important as we move forward. In terms of just generally what gets me up, I mean, it is overall my excitement and my optimism for the future that we are all currently co-creating here in America. Because, as I've said on many occasions, I have been paying attention to this messed up world for virtually my entire life. And I've gone through some really dark periods where I thought that a future that I had hoped might exist was never going to get here, and that we were just going to continue that slow, dark slide into the abyss. And now I don't feel that way, and I haven't felt that way for a very long time. And I see the United States incrementally moving forward in a positive direction. And a lot of that has to do with the minds that are opening everywhere. Everybody is at a different point in their awakening process. But I would say undeniably, a very, very large number of people in this moment are more awake than they have ever been at any point. And that is despite the best efforts of that which we fight against. That is despite all of the disinformation, despite all of the lies, despite all of the manipulation. We are moving towards a true golden age. And that's not just for us here in the United States, but that's for everybody everywhere. We're going to be in a position where nations are going to rise. They are going to be empowered to take control of their own destiny. And they're going to stop looking outward and they're going to start looking inward, because every single person has the ability to do that. But to varying degrees, things have not been allowed to progress. And we can be a model here in the United States in a way that I think maybe people thought wasn't going to happen again. But I see it right now. People are looking to the United States and they're saying, my God, I've been lied to this entire time. The United States is beautiful. The people are beautiful. And Donald Trump is not the monster that I was told.
I also think that I don't know. It's hard to put into words why it feels like there's an inflection point. And I know that there's a lot of it's the emotion and the nostalgia that you mentioned around the 250th, but it's also just, even on an actual level, a lot of the stuff we've been talking about for years has been happening.
Yeah.
It's just that it's been this process. And I think the encouraging thing about that, whether you're talking about the search for justice, the hunt for justice, that's almost, I almost consider it, we're simultaneously in the midst of a demolition, a deconstruction of the system, and a construction of the new system. And I call it the anti-system in my writing. That's one of the paradoxes, I think, of how do you build a new system without making it a system susceptible to the same, corruption as the system we're fighting against. But the other positive way of looking at that is that this dismantling, this demolition phase is happening concurrent with the construction phase, which means that at a certain point, even on an actual level, not just on a spiritual or a psychological level like we're kind of talking about tonight, there is this exponential ramp that you would hit on an actual level. Because at a certain point, the system you're dismantling, the systems of control, the control structures that, we're fighting against, whether that's political, financial, military, kinetic, cartels, all this kind of stuff, border security. As those things get checked off the list, as those aspects of the system get checked off the list and dismantled, it feels to me like more of that energy can then compound into the building phase. So I think that's part of what's going on too, of where one of the reasons, it can seem curious on the surface that Trump, despite dealing with all this surging fuel prices and energy shocks and all the stuff we talked about at the beginning of the show, that are still true and are still difficult, he speaks with such confidence, not just that things are going to get better, but the speed at which they're going to get better once that starts happening. Yeah. And I still do believe him, even if maybe some of us thought maybe that happens starting right in 2025. And I don't know, that's kind of how I see it, of that maybe that's what they're talking about. As soon as they're able to divert that energy off of the deconstruction phase, it gets compounded and exponential into the construction phase. And that probably, as John and I talked about on DPH for a couple of years during the Biden era, we used to call it the switch theory, that a lot of the work for the golden age was actually kind of being laid during those years under Biden. Yeah. But it just feels like that's like an actual framework rather than just a narrative one.
I agree with you. I like to call it the Trump world order. Okay. It's not the new world order. It's not the old world order. It is a new world order that President Trump is ushering in that is not based on satanic principles, okay, but is instead based on freedom, prosperity, sovereignty, and faith, most of all. That's another huge part, is that so many people realizing that this is not all just physical. This is not, there may be a lot of theoretical things happening that people are trying to figure out, but there is an undeniable spiritual component. And part of your ability to navigate all of that, in my opinion, has got to be based in your foundation in faith. And more people than ever, they were pushed away from God. We had God stripped out of every aspect of our lives. And President Trump has helped to bring that back in. And so many people, even if they don't like Trump, they are turning to God to ask for answers. And I think that is undeniably one of the most powerful aspects of what's happening.
Absolutely. I've said before, I've given my anecdotes where I didn't consider myself necessarily an atheist, but I just didn't think about God in those terms. And it's the Trump era, the Q era, the awakening era that has brought me more firmly every month, basically, into that view. And then having a kid will certainly not dissuade you from that path. Once you're looking at your own kid, once you're looking at your own son, it's actually kind of ties a bow on everything we've talked about tonight, because not only does it bring you to God, or it should, I think, but it kind of redoubles your resolve. And I think that's the inflection point we're at, if I can put it into words. It's almost like a mix of the posture we spent the first hour of the show talking about, that kind of needed warlike posture of what we're not going to take anymore and what we want the future to look like. That's kind of a warlike posture, but it's got to be married with a hopeful posture, an optimistic posture for the future that you've got to build. And, nothing exemplifies that like bringing a child into the world, because you're like, man, that's just God in a little human form. Pure innocence, pure happiness, unless he's grumpy and throwing a tantrum. But, you combine that and that hope for the future. And, I think that's a big thing, a big marker too. Along with people going toward faith, I don't know if you've seen statistics, you've probably referenced it on your own show, but I've been very encouraged to see that according to the statistics, younger generations, specifically men right now, are gravitating very heavily back toward Christianity in a trend that they have not seen in generations, like going back 100 years or so, as far back as they can look. I think that I've been talking to my wife. I don't know if it's just because we have a toddler, so we see toddlers everywhere, but I really feel that we are right now in the beginnings of a new baby boom, that those things don't get codified until retroactively, right?
Right.
And that's hope. People don't have kids when they don't feel hopeful.
Right.
People don't go to God when they don't feel hopeful. And I absolutely think that while right now maybe it's only people like us and people in our audience who do understand that there is some line to be drawn between Donald Trump and that awakening within the American people, in hindsight, I think it will be impossible to separate the American awakening from a Christian revival,
Amen.
A Christian reawakening, and a new baby boom.
I agree with you. I mean, the original Great Awakening was all about that spirit of revival and people having that spiritual awakening again. And I think that it's undeniable that's what we're having right now as well.
I'm going to hit you with one more question before I
Okay.
let you go, and it's putting you on the spot with a random.
Okay.
We've been talking about the founding this week. I mean, everybody's thinking about the founding. I've been kind of revisiting a lot of histories about the founding and stories about the founding and the founding fathers. Given all your experience in the info war, everything you've observed from Trump, everything you know about history and have relearned through history, like you do on Baseless Conspiracies, is there anything that you used to believe about the founding that you don't anymore? Or is there a new way you think about any aspect of the founding or the founding fathers, positive or negative, given kind of how you see the world these days?
Absolutely. So it's been basically accepted and spoken as fact for most of my life that Thomas Jefferson had babies with a slave that came into his ownership at the age of 9 through the estate of his wife's father. And that girl, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, she was actually half sisters with Jefferson's wife. Jefferson's wife died at Monticello. He was destroyed by it. He apparently locked himself in his room for like weeks and just kind of processed it, didn't want to go on. And then when she was 16, so, 5 years on, Jefferson sent her with he and his wife's daughter to France, to Paris, to basically, be her caretaker or something like that. And slavery was not legal in France. And so, like, by virtue of that fact, this young girl basically became a free person when she went to France and then came back. And allegedly, Thomas Jefferson and her slept together. But of course, it's been positioned as rape.
Yeah.
Because a slave cannot consent. And of course, she was, much younger than him. But allegedly, there is these descendants of Jefferson in black communities throughout different parts of the country. And that was just supposed to be a fact. Okay. Like you go to Monticello and you will see a whole display about this in the museum that Jefferson had sex with this slaved girl and it was rape and, there are descendants of him. So there was all of those claims come from a DNA test that was done like in the early 90s. They basically, because people had said it and like all of the Jefferson scholars had said, no, that never would have happened. That's not the man Jefferson was. So they did this test and they were able to connect people of this young girl, descendants of her, to DNA that was connected to the Jefferson family. They never connected it directly to Thomas Jefferson. And so there was a paper that was written. It was published in like Nature, if I'm not mistaken. And they just presented it as fact. Of course, at some point in the paper, they said, this is the best guess.
They give themselves the out.
They gave themselves the out. And then now there were people, this was done like through the Monticello Foundation or whatever the nonprofit is that runs it today. And there were some on the board who said, oh my gosh, yes, we have to say that Jefferson raped a slave girl, and now there are black Jefferson descendants now. There was a whole other group that were like, hey, the evidence is not as clear-cut as what these people are saying. Now, they wrote a competing paper, which, of course, was not covered in the same way that the original paper was covered, because this is like right at the advent of the op to sort of put a black eye on the founding fathers and make them appear to be, just nefarious. Yeah. And so like nobody talked about it. Everybody just continues to refer back to this other paper. And, it was even so like the narrative was sold so hard that even people who were like Jeffersonian scholars who had previously, just like 2 months before this paper having been written, had come out and like refuted the concept of Jefferson having raped a slave. And then suddenly after that, they're like, I was wrong. Jefferson's a rapist. He's a terrible person. So that right there, that is one powerful thing right there, because I there is nothing that I have seen to 100% confirm that Jefferson had sex with this slave girl and had children. There were other male Jeffersons that lived on Monticello or would come and visit Monticello. There are other explanations that could lead to, the presence of Jefferson's DNA being in these future generations. So, I think that was a really important one because, everything that I've read about Jefferson, everything that I've done in terms of research would suggest that was not him. That was not the kind of dude he was. But there is like this like rabid group of people who salivate at the idea of besmirching the memories of the founding fathers. And I think that was one that definitely I had changed my mind on once I learned that.
Yeah, that's a good one. And it's sometimes I always use the term reverse indicators. Mm-hmm. The idea, not just that they're trying to besmirch the founders, but the idea that, they're almost codifying Jefferson's ideas, or they're admitting that they cannot combat the legacy of Jefferson on a rhetorical, logical, moral, or spiritual level, right? Mm-hmm. Because if they could, they would just say these ideas are bad. These are bad ideas and they need to be done away with. When they pivot their attacks from these are bad ideas that don't make sense or are immoral or amoral, they don't go in that direction. They go, these are bad men.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's when, you're almost getting counter signal there, which is pretty damn based for some of the founders in retrospect, like a Jefferson, where it's like, man, his ideas were so good and so ironclad and so inarguable, besides John Drake. No, just screwing around. But, largely in the current context, that this is a guy who's been dead in something that measures centuries rather than decades, and they can't defeat his arguments on a moral or foundational level. So they have to try to go after his character, which is obviously the same thing we see in the modern day with Trump. Right. But they still have to do it with them. So that's a good one to bring up. And how many of these other stories do we have that are total bullshit that try to retroactively change these guys? And the other side of that coin, I look at reverse indicators this way too. When I started seeing the lionization in the last 20 years of Alexander Hamilton by all of the worst people in the world, that was a reverse red pill for me too, because I started going, I don't know a whole lot about him. Is he a huge bitch? Turns out, yes. That guy was a traitor to basically everything the founders believed in, and yet we are told that he is one of the founders. So whenever you see, Broadway plays and Disney series and major projects and celebrities endorsing one of the founding fathers, he might not have been one of the good ones.
I agree. 100%.
All right, Zach. Well, you were just what we needed. We're kicking off the start. We should start. July should be the first month of the year. I think we should.
I won't disagree.
We should start doing that.
Okay.
So at Badlands, July is the first month of the year. It's a new year. I think it's going to be a golden year. And thanks for joining me, Zach, for getting that through people's heads.
It was a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for the generous rants as well. I will go listen to BB read them in the chat with you guys.
All right, man. Thanks a lot.
All right. Peace.
All right, guys. Thanks to Zach for joining me. Yeah, I have my notes, but the best thing about this show is we just go where it's going to take us, and we generally hit on the themes I want to hit on, which is I think we're at an inflection point. I think it's a very good inflection point. I had said I'm going to get to your rants and everything. If you guys have any last minute rants, send them over. I'll hit them before I get out of here. I do want to try to make famous last words. I want to try to make these narrative episodes a little tighter than I have in the past. I don't need to go 3 hours, 3.5 hours. You guys don't need me to go 3.5 hours. Tell me in the comments or in chat, or with a boost or something like that, if you like them when they're more like 2 hours rather than 3 or more. I know that there's always a couple of people that are like, go 4 or 5 hours. That destroys me. It destroys my guests. I'm trying to get them out of here on time as well. And, I know that there's a lot of people that are trying to watch a lot of the Badlands shows, and then they're sort of, they're seeing something that's 3 hours and 15 minutes, and they don't want to really endure something like that. So I'm trying to sort of condense some of it into hit people with the bigger topics I want to discuss right away, and do a short, brisk 2 hour. Mrs. Bright does not trust me. She does not have faith in her husband, but I know the Bright Army does. Anyway, 2 hours, 2.5 hours, maybe 3.5 sometimes, but like a 3.5 that feels like 1 3/4 is kind of what I'm going for. It's a new me. It's July 5th. It's a new narrative. It's a narrative that's going to be 4 hours, but it'll feel shorter. So, yeah, I think, I don't know, I just feel like things are going better. I think things are going to start rapidly turning around. We even had Bitcoin bounce off its lows around 58. It's up to 63 tonight. Just feels like there's a lot of stuff in the air. I would keep an eye on Tesla stock this week. Not investment advice. I have no insider knowledge. I'm just autistic. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. 60% of the time, it works every time. I think we're going to get a big momentum shift in July. I've agreed with what Ash has been laying out for a while. On an actual level, she's been laying out this idea of a change program. 18 months of a change program. You've got July 4th, the semi-quincentennial, which is a word none of us knew before this week, and I will call you a liar if you say otherwise. And I'm a person who knows lots of words, takes pride in knowing lots of words, and I did not know that word. Doesn't mean we're done, doesn't mean the mission is over, but I think we're entering a new phase. I don't think Trump holds celebrations like that just to kind of drag us through months and months and months of strife. There's certainly going to be plenty of it. There's going to be plenty of psyops flying around ahead of the midterms in particular, but I think this is a posture shift. I think the go fast and break things sort of mindset is going to take off. And lately, I find my mindset gravitating much more toward, as Zach said, technology. And as if you guys have been reading my writing this year, largely around the Iran war, most of what I'm talking about there from a disentanglement perspective is energy. And I think that this beautification project Trump is in the midst of is congruent with both. It's not just parallel with energy and technology. It's all related. It's all one thing. The new golden age is going to be financial. It's going to be energy based. It's going to be artistic. It's a renaissance. Chris Paul's been calling it a new American Renaissance for some time. I totally agree with that. And I think part of the dismantling and the leaving behind of the old system is going to resemble a warp speed push into the new golden age. And we're going to see this in terms of aesthetics out of Trump, out of DC. It's kind of funny because let me know in chat if you agree with this. But I think because so many of us have been disillusioned for good reason with the deep state and with everything they've done to this country, and with how often we've made, there's an analog. When you say DC in this audience, when you say DC to a Badlander or to many people in the MAGA movement, they think swamp, right? They think that's where the bad guys are. And I'm no different. I certainly have been feeling that way. So I'm not saying that we need the revitalization of Washington, D.C. or anything like that on an actual level. But I will admit, when Trump is posting these pictures and these renovations, and I'm seeing, plenty of other sources corroborating this stuff, fountains in D.C. and reflecting pool, and we're re-gilding statues in gold leaf, where we're building a triumphal arch. It makes me want to take my kid to DC. It makes me want to be proud of something that I have never been proud of. And I think that's a microcosm. I think Trump is amplifying Washington DC not because it is objectively the most important thing. He's revitalizing it because it's been the heart of darkness for a century or more. It's been the heart of corruption. It's the heart of the swamp. It's the epicenter of the decline of our empire. By the way, Zach was right earlier when he referenced the Roman Empire, but I forgot to tell him. The Roman Empire's most stable phase, known as the Pax Romana, Roman peace, lasted approximately 207 years, spanning from the ascension of Augustus in 27 BCE to the death of Marcus Aurelius in 180 CE. This era was marked by internal peace, thriving trade, and peak territorial expansion. Following this golden age, the empire experienced severe political volatility, civil wars, and fragmentation, though the eastern half, the Byzantine Empire, survived another millennium until 1453. I turned Mrs. Bright on recently, not just physically, that just happens if I walk in the room, but also cognitively and spiritually to Marcus Aurelius, having her read some of his stuff. She also, G-Money would have been very proud. Caught her on the deck yesterday or today, I don't know which day it was, I think it was yesterday, in 95-degree heat. Bring a margarita out to her. She's sitting there on the deck reading the Bitcoin Standard. So we've done well. We've all done well. They can be rewilded. And DC can be revitalized. I distracted myself from my own point I was making. City on the Hill. Trump is making that literal and narrative. He's making it actual and narrative. He's making DC seem awesome and beautiful. And it's recalling our past that was taken from us. And I think it's pointing to a future that we could have writ large across the American mindscape and landscape. And all coinciding with the World Cup and the Europeans being here, and, Canadians getting mad about the Pajeets pooping on their beaches. It's all related, guys. The threads are all related. From John Trump and Bitcoin to Marcus Aurelius and those Pajeets been pooping. They were pooping on beaches in whatever BCE. They were. You think they weren't pooping on the beaches in 27 BCE? They were pooping on the beaches from 27 BCE right on through Pax Romana and right through the Byzantine Empire. They're still doing it today in Ontario. The beaches of Ontario is where they have come. And I say no further. You can go no further, you pooping man, you tent-bearing, hole-digging savages. You can go no further. That's the theme of tonight's show. If you take nothing else from tonight's show, it is that. I'm going to save some of the Tesla stuff for, I think, a dedicated episode. Maybe I'll do a solo episode on that stuff. I saw some people trying to bully me into 4 and 6 hour shows, but it's not going to work. It's not going to work tonight. It's not going to work until it does. So anyway, I don't even know what I was just talking about, but maybe it made sense. Hope it did. DC looks cool again. It's only going to get better. And it's pretty funny seeing communists pooping in the reflecting pool, throwing algae in the reflecting pool. And it just codifies what Trump is doing. Let me get through the rants here, and then we will get out of here in a little bit. The Boom Diggity sent $100 over to start the show off. Really appreciate that. And sent this. Is this the Comey? This is the Comey press conference from several years ago. Sure, why don't we, for $100 rant, let's go down memory lane for the people. Oh, this is a music video? I can't play the music video on stream because YouTube will get mad at me. but I will share it in the chat. This is the Comey music video that Zach was referencing. Thanks, Boom. Said, the link in my rant is the song link. Snowcat Operator, who I hung with, had a cigar with in Deadwood, sent over 5 gifted subs. Much appreciated. John did point out something good last week, or something notable, which is that when people are gifted subs to Badlands, the irony is it's almost like telling on your classmates, because we see the names that get the subscriptions, and we're like, so you weren't a subscriber. Son of Thunder Bear, Smay 60s, The Ninth Plague, Cloud Topper, and Rita Dotson. I mean, thanks to Snowcat, but you know, guess we know who's real and who's not. Tom Terrific 54 for the cause. Thank you, Tom. Matt VK, happy belated 250 birthday. Hope it was kick ass. I see what you did there. It's a kicking motion and then a donkey. And then he explained his own joke, which you shouldn't do, Matt. Max Southwest Patriot, do you realize thousands of patriots on the West Coast literally make dinner and sit down to watch your show while they eat, and you're talking about poop on the beach? And did you have a dinner conversation about the pooping Packies? The pooping Packies of Wasaga Beach? It's a travesty. Okay, the Canadians have never done a thing for us, but if we can help them with the pooping Pajeets problem. They actually gave us hockey. Hockey's pretty great, so, you know, I'm okay with that. But, you know, they can't be pooping on the beach anymore. Angie K, me and my husband are driving to DC, hoping to get there for the last day of the fair. Y'all have any idea where to stay or what to do? If anybody in chat does, send Angie K some links. I have no idea. I was in DC when I was a kid. I had a memory there that I thought I made up because it made no sense to my adult mind, where I was like, I remember being in a bamboo forest in Washington, D.C. So if you think bringing a little kid to a place like that, if they're going to remember anything, just making sure I don't have a tick on my arm. It's just a wound. A lot of ticks around here. I've already got the Lyme. What more can they do to me? They can give me that steak virus or whatever the hell it is. I don't want that. Yeah, I don't know anything about traveling DC, but there was a bamboo forest. That's the moral of the story. Jesus, I'm like a cat tonight. No attention span. The Boom Diggity, maybe it's this chocolate stuff, which, by the way, it is really good. So you guys should try it out. cacaobliss.com/Badlands. I keep wanting to say cocoa, but it's cacao. And it is fantastic. I don't feel jittery, but I am acting as ADHD as usual. But I'm also feeling pretty chill. Maybe that's because I don't have caffeine in my system. The Boom Diggity, $20. MIT thread on John G. Trump. Also, archived link to the article in the thread to the WAPO article. Let me post this in chat. Guys, if you have not gone down that rabbit hole, it's just if anybody, there's so much shorthand in this audience. If anybody somehow doesn't know the context there, John G. Trump was given the task by the FBI to handle Nikola Tesla's papers in the event of Tesla's death in order to examine them for threats to national security. As in, did any of Tesla's designs present threats to national security if actualized, if they ended up in the wrong hands? His report to the FBI was that they did not present a threat, but this community, including myself, run absolutely buck wild with those theories. The fact that Trump specifically referenced John Trump in his Bitcoin speech, I think, is very notable. And F it. It is what it is, guys. I mean, I can't stop myself. Can't stop myself, and you can't quit me. So this is what we're doing.
Kill each other. These guys have a great feeling. Very smart people, too. Congratulations on all that you've accomplished. This room is amazing. The people in this room, high IQ individuals. I'm running against a low IQ individual, her. I'm not even talking about him, her. I got a low IQ individual. The reason I've come to address the Bitcoin community today can be summed up in two very simple words: America first. Because if we don't do it, China's going to be doing, others are going to be doing it. Let's do it and do it right. My vision is for an America that dominates the future. We have the best economy, the highest standard of living, the safest and most beautiful cities. And by the way, when I say safest, our cities are going to hell right now. Our cities are going to hell.
When I say safest, I don't mean anything.
Democrats that have destroyed our cities, but we'll work with them, and we're going to get our cities back. We're going to bring our country back.
A lot of future talk about Bitcoin.
And we really were the freest and the most ambitious, most dynamic nation ever to exist on Earth, and we're going to get that back again, because we're not there now. We're a nation in decline. You know it, we know it. Doesn't sound nice, but it's okay, because we're going to bring it back. We're going to bring it back fast. Right now, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing what's happened. Even today, when you look at what we just said, that would never have happened if they respected our country. If we don't embrace crypto and Bitcoin technology, China will, other countries will, they'll dominate, and we cannot let China dominate. They are making too much progress as it is. And we want them to be successful. I don't want China to be successful, but we have to be the most successful. That's what's gonna happen. I want the United States to be first in technology, first in science, first in manufacturing, first in artificial intelligence, and first in space. You know, at MIT, my uncle was a professor there, Dr. John Trump. He would have fit in with this room very nicely, actually. That's why I mention it. And I believe he was the longest-serving professor in the history of MIT. He graduated. We have a very intelligent family, actually. He graduated tremendously. I think he has 3 different degrees, but they said, would you like to stay on, John, and be a professor? Well, I've got a lot of offers, I assume he said, but I've got a lot of offers. Well, we'd like, he was there for, I believe, 41 years. When I was in the White House, the head of MIT came to see me, and they presented me with a book on my uncle. He was a legendary guy in the academic world and in the world of MIT. So I understand a lot about what you're doing, and I have great respect for highly intelligent people. And you are highly intelligent. America's destiny is to lead our rivals in everything and to surrender our industries to no one, You know, some of you are involved with AI, but you also have the same thing. You need a thing called electricity. You need a lot of electricity. You know, AI needs to be really dominant, and China can do it much easier. We have environmental impact statements to do, but we're going to do things that nobody thought were possible. You need tremendous amounts of electricity. You need double the electricity of the entire electricity that we have right now in the United States to dominate, and we'll get that done. Who would?
So we could go all night on this. We're not going to. Talking about energy, talking about how much we need, talking about AI, talking about futurism, talking about Uncle John. Right here. Dr. John G. Trump. Pretty smart. Family smarter than you guys think it is. And then we had Saylor come up at the same conference. And what did he start talking about right after that?
He said, you want to understand? Well, this is Tesla, and Tesla had a quote. He said, you want to understand the universe? Think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. I'm going to translate that. I'm going to talk about the physics of money now. What are the physics of money? Energy is money, or capital, or wealth. You could use them interchangeably for this speech. Frequency is about the duration or the lifespan. How long will it take? A minute, an hour, a year, a century? And we vibrate money every time we trade with each other or we transfer from one locale to another, or we transform a property into another type of asset. And so here is an important equation. This is useful life is equal to the value of an asset divided by the cost to maintain that asset.
So again, there's plenty more there, plenty more to that rabbit hole, but I think it is highly notable. Michael Saylor of MIT. Also, speaking of reverse indicators, who is all of Wall Street trying to crash over the last 2 months? That would be Michael Saylor's strategy. Which company has not been allowed into the S&P 500? That is Michael Saylor's strategy. Why did Michael Saylor name it strategy? What is Bitcoin really? Is G-Money crazy in the wrong way or the right way? Why is Donald Trump talking to Bitcoin maximalists in 2024 about energy, artificial intelligence, and John G. Trump? I don't know, guys. Sometimes schizophrenia is a feature and not a bug. So I'll do a bigger presentation on that, I think, maybe sometime when I do a solo show. Otherwise, let me get through the rest of these donations. B1 Car, Zach makes BB look like his albino. It's true. It's sad. It's very sad. I need to get to the beach. I live in a beach town. It's just that I'm working all the time. I work like 12 hours a day. Petty 429, Red Pilly Yacht Club. Does Zach have a yacht? Max Southwest Patriot. Zach, when was the first time you had heard of quantum tech? Sorry, Zach didn't see this, but maybe he can answer you on his own if he does see this. When was the first time you heard of quantum tech? Yeah, quantum's a big thing coming out lately. Trump flirting with the drops as usual. Also interesting. G-Money has attempted to connect Bitcoin to the drops as well. I think all these things are related. Keith O'Higgins, got to give credit to the Pajit porn stars. They never have to pay to have their bums bleached. Rubber Heart, subscription to Rumble Premium, subscription to Badlands Media. Well, if you subscribe to Rumble Premium through the Badlands Media channel, it's a subscription for us. So that's, in case anybody didn't know that, when you subscribe to Rumble Premium, you get the advantages of Rumble Premium, right? Where you can watch premium streams wherever on Rumble, and you get, I don't know if it's an ad-free experience, but you get a reduced ad experience. But if you subscribe through us, then, and let's say that's $5 a month or $10 a month, whatever that is, we get a cut of that. We get a big cut of that. I think we get most of it. So that just helps the foundation of the floor. But, you know, said before, I run the Badlands Substack along with Ash and Ghost. Our last episode was a spicy one, as they usually are. Our last episode of The Blitz, which is exclusive to the Badlands Substack. Go to badlands.substack.com. You get the Badlands Blitz, which is a 1 hour-ish video podcast every Saturday morning. Otherwise, Monday through Friday, Ash, myself, and Ghost trade off who is the managing editor of a daily news brief, and the other two act as commentators on those briefs. We try to hit news items that we don't necessarily cover on the shows, or we cover them in a little bit of detail. They're usually kind of fun, usually funny commentary bits on some of the biggest stories that are going on right now. So check that out. Flotus. Is this actually Melania? I think it's actually Melania. Yes, Ash, we did front run the commie narrative. By the way, on that episode of The Blitz that came out on Friday, actually, it was early this week. It was early last week. We were talking about Trump taking stakes in public companies, Intel, MP Materials, a lot more to come. And I had floated the idea. I said, you're going to see more of this. You're going to see AI companies. You're going to see oil companies. We haven't seen the oil companies yet, but over the weekend, news broke that the Trump administration is in talks with OpenAI for a stake in their company. So this kind of nationalization is going to be framed as communism, but I think it is anything but. So Flotus, Melania herself, sent $50 over and said, thanks for always bringing such a bright, burning such a bright light, BB. Thank you, Flotus. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm trying to refocus. Maybe people did notice, maybe people didn't notice. I mean, I didn't always notice myself. Sometimes getting a little bit drawn into the fire. Still got to be fiery, but mostly peaceful. But I want to refocus a bit for myself. I want to refocus on not writing about or commenting on what I think people want me to, which sounds ironic, but commenting on and focusing on my writing and commentary on the things I'm really interested in. And some of the things I'm really interested in are really weird rabbit holes, like Trump and Tesla and all these kinds of things. And obviously that's what you guys end up liking the most. Anytime I kind of go spurg out in some weird direction, which leads to like the Sovereign Alliance theory or Righteous Russia or the Timeline War series on my Substack, that always ends up being the stuff you guys like the most anyway. So just, again, it's not like I haven't been doing that, but it's more been, I've just with life and being busy and everything, had my health issues the last couple of years, feeling better. We're in a better spot, and I just want to refocus on doing some quality stuff, quality writing, quality research at Badlands and on my own. And, appreciate you guys supporting that. Sort of the steadying realization that I do not need to try to figure everything out. That's why we're a decentralized collective at Badlands and in the InfoWar. Everybody else at Badlands has their own areas of focus. We all kind of cross-pollinate with each other. But because of my spurged out mind, I have a tendency to try to figure everything out about everything all the time. Very unhealthy, very mentally unhealthy, leads to a lot of internal mental tension. And I'm trying to refine myself and say, which rabbit hole do you want to go down? Which one do you actually want to focus on? What do you actually want to talk about? What do you actually want to think about? What is making you less agitated to think about, and therefore better at presenting, better at writing, better at communicating with the other Badlanders I have on my show? Who do I want to have on the show, and why do I want them on the show? What do I actually want to talk to them about? And this weekend was a good example of that, of really thinking about who do I want on to talk about the 250th, rather than like, I know I want to talk to Zach, I know I want to talk to Ash, I know I want to talk to these people, and I'll figure out what we're going to talk about. That's what happens when you're doing too many things. So I'm refocusing on that. I knew Zach was the guy to talk about our change at the 250th, and I'm glad with how that went. And going forward, just trying to be more intentional about the stuff I'm putting out. You guys probably won't even notice a difference, but maybe you will. If you do, then let me know. And otherwise, looking to expand a little bit of what I do here, even though I do a lot, and a little bit of what I do on my own Substack. If I can find the time and the energy, but I'm determined to, because I'm feeling like we're transitioning from, oh my God, there's so much stuff happening that needs to be disentangled in the first 18 months of Trump 2.0 to, oh my God, there's so much happening that is awesome and incredible. And I'm looking forward to writing about a lot of that stuff, no matter what the media tries to convince us of otherwise. So thank you guys. We also had Petty429 who gifted a sub to Dust Bunny 007, who was not hitherto a subscriber, but henceforth shall be. So thank you, Petty429, and thank you for calling out Dust Bunny 007, who was not a subscriber to Rumble Premium or Badlands. Next week, I am going to have John Harold on. Don't run away. It's okay. This was part of the plan. This was always going to happen again at some point in time. Every once in a while, it's going to happen. It's okay. Don't run away. Don't hide. It's going to be a good conversation. We're going to do a state of the devolution. And we're going to play some games about if devolution is still in the offing, what would it look like? Who would it be against? And what would its mechanisms be? So it's going to be kind of a fun conversation. It was cool seeing Trump touch down in North Dakota on the 5-year anniversary of the first devolution article that John released in 2021. So great time to revisit some of that, especially if we are in the midst of a turn in a positive direction. And the week after that, I'm excited to have Matt Ehret, who has not been around in a little while. He's been very busy, that little Canadian minx, running from podcast to podcast flying all over the place, having interesting conversations, and leaving us dry, high and dry with those conversations. So I cornered him virtually this week and I said, Matt, I'm coming on the narrative again. And we're going to talk about something that will probably trigger a very small number of people. And that is the ongoing PSYOP, that is, the attempt by said small group of people to turn every single InfoWar topic into a discussion on the City of London, and how that in and of itself is itself a PSYOP. And I've been sniffing this out for a while. I've seen you guys doing it. I've seen you scrounging around in there, trying to bring everything to the City of London. Some people are doing that earnestly. Some people are doing that very not earnestly. There is actually money behind the effort. We may or may not get into the details of that. We'll have to see what we can talk about. But we will get into the details of the true and the real about the City of London and the British Empire and the Shadow Empire and the heirs, or rather the progenitors to the deep state that we know today. But also, we're going to talk about how trying to conflate everything with one specific answer or one specific cabal within one specific place and one specific framework is not a good path to go down. And that is often how the cabal has survived awakenings like this, by getting everybody siloed into one tentacle of a vast hydra that we're trying to take down everywhere all at once. City of London is a real thing, but it's also a PSYOP, in my opinion. And Matt Ehret is the guy who knows the most about this that I know. So that should be a good conversation in a couple weeks. And besides that, if you guys would be so kind, and if you want to and find value in it, go ahead and go over to burningbright.substack.com. My most recent feature hit this morning of Founders and Foundations. The American Awakening is 250 years old, and it's just getting started. This is kind of a stream of consciousness about my feelings on this turn that I think we're in the midst of, the semi-quincentennial, the word none of us knew, but everybody pretended to. And this is all about not just kind of what Trump has meant to this movement, but what I think this movement is, what it was, what it is now, and what it could be and maybe should be. I use the term decentralized collective. That is my vision, my ideal vision of what we can be. And I think it's the ideal vision, most idealistic vision of what the founders were. So this is about the past, and it's about the present, and it's about the future. A lot of great feedback early. I know you guys have been busy with family and everything. This one's not time sensitive. It's not about the news cycle. It's about big ideas and encouraging ideas. So check out of Founders and Foundations. It's free, burningbright.substack.com. Anybody who chooses to support me over there or through any of the means you guys support us, it's very much appreciated. This stuff takes a lot of work. As Zach was coaching me at the beginning of the show, it did come with more pressures than I thought it would a few years ago. But those are good problems to have, and we really appreciate those of you who come to the events, who watch these shows, who support the stuff, who support our work, who share it if you find value in it, and who support it if you can. Otherwise, as I always say, the war is a story, the story is a war. Act accordingly, and I will see you next